now this one must be very profound. The Ethics of Aristotle. Now, anybody that read that must believe he's a cut above anybody that hadn't. See, it's no good, Montag. We've all got to be alike. The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal. So, we must burn the books, Montag.
We want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to be free to ride. We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left. Because my children are coming. I told you 20 years ago.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In my way of thinking, without judgment, you might as well be dead. Your brain is, so why not the rest of you? We were talking about marijuana. We still are. Marijuana is the flame, heroin is the fuse, LSD is the bomb. So don't you try to equate liquor with marijuana, mister, not with me.
Pop your culture.
And with that, Pop Your Culture for this week is off and running. As usual, I'm your host, Randall LeBron, guiding us through an eclectic mix that I sort of tie together with whatever little bits of information I can just sort of drag out of the ether. The ether being, I guess, my brain, and just spilling it out into this microphone and just sort of taking us on an interesting ride. Now, I've been doing sort of theme shows for the last run of a few weeks here, and tonight we're kind of dropping that. We're just going to go into something where I'm just playing a bunch of stuff I like. Tunes I dig with more or less rock and roll context. We got a couple of sets where it's just going to be one band and multiple songs, so we can sort of check out a bit of the flavor. We're going to get into some cover songs because I think it's neat to hear songs reimagined and re-envisioned by other artists every once in a while. Maybe they do a close reading, maybe they take it somewhere else. That's part of the fun. But getting us going tonight is a song that I almost feel weird admitting that I like. The band is often derided as just being not really very cool. I remember their first album just being this weird southern rock thing that didn't seem like it was going to turn into anything too big. And then, what was it, around 2007, 2008-ish, the band really started to take off. The band I'm talking about, while they're opening up the show tonight, it's the Kings of Leon. This is Closer.
frightened, you can be frightened, you can be it's-okay. And if you're frightened, you can be frightened, you can be it's-okay.
It's almost like I had to feel some sort of level of concern to reestablish some sort of a hipster rock credentials to follow up Kings of Leon with Radiohead, and going all the way back to 1995 and the album The Bends, the second track on side 2, because I was more familiar with that one via cassette tape than CD for the longest time. From side 2, that was the second track, My Iron Lung. It followed up Just, which had a relatively iconic music video for those of us who were, those much music video watchers back in 1995. The man walking along the street and tripping over the guy who was basically just nearly catatonic, lying on his side on the sidewalk. And they have a conversation, and it's subtitled while the band is playing in their high-rise apartment room, looking down on the scene below. And just when you think the guy's going to explain why he's there, he does, but they drop the subtitles. It's nearly 30 years, or like 28 years past the release of that video. I still don't really know what was said, and I think that's one of those things that's going to kind of always eat at me just a little bit. Next up on Pop Your Culture, I had mentioned in the beginning of the show that we're going to run some sets where it's going to be multiple songs by one artist, and this is a band that had been floating around in my mind for a little while. It's a duo out of New Zealand. Yes, we're looking at Flight of the Conchords. This is a pretty interesting comedy duo. The duo is made up of Brett McKenzie and Jermaine Clement, both of whom have appeared in a number of projects. I'd have to say that I've seen more of Jermaine's work since they sort of stopped doing Flight of the Conchords, but Flight of the Conchords was such a funny and just a surprisingly strong musical outing that I'm going to run a series of what amounts to 5 songs between essentially the season 1 and season 2 of the show. 3 from season 1, 2 from season 2. Smack dab in the middle of the set, we have Bowie. Before that, Robots, and getting it going is this one. This is Inner City Pressure, their homage to the Pet Shop Boys, right here on Pop Culture on Radio Gordo and Cheer FM.
Inner city life, inner city pressure, the concrete world is starting to get you. The city is alive, the city is expanding. Living in the city can be demanding. You've pawned everything you own. Your toothbrush jar and a camera phone. You don't know where you're going, you cross the street. You don't know why you did your walk back across the street. Standing in the sitting room, totally skint, and your favorite jersey is covered in lint. You want to sit down, but you sold your chair, so you just stand there. You just stand there. Inner city pressure.
Counting coins on the counter of the 7-Eleven from 6:15 till 7:15. The manager, Bevan, starts to abuse me. Hey man, I just want some muesli. Neon signs, hidden messages, questions, answers, fetishes. You know you're not in high finance, considering second-hand underpants. Check your mind, how'd it get so bad? What happened to those other underpants you had? Look in your pockets, haven't found a cent yet. Landlines on your balls, have you paid your rent yet?
Inner city pressure. Inner city pressure.
prostitute just to pay for your lessons. You're learning the flute. Ladies wouldn't pay you very much for this. Looks like you'll never be a concert flautist.
You don't measure up to the expectation. When you're unemployed, there's no vacation. No one cares, no one sympathizes. You just stay home and play synthesizers.
Searching for hidden treasure, all you'll find is inner city pressure.
You've lost perspective like a picture by Escher. It's the pressure.
The distant future, the year 2000. The distant future, the year 2000. The distant future, the distant future.
It is the distant future, the year 2000.
We are robots.
The world is quite different ever since the robotic uprising of the late 90s. There is no more unhappiness.
Affirmative.
We no longer say yes. Instead, we say affirmative.
Yes, affirmative.
Unless we know the other robot really well.
There is no more unethical treatment of the elephants.
Well, there's no more elephants, so... but still it's good. There's only one kind of dance, the robot.
Oh, and the robo.
Oh, and the two kinds of dances.
But there are no more humans.
Finally, robotic beings rule the world. The humans are dead. The humans are dead. We used poisonous gases, and we poisoned their asses. The humans are dead.
The humans are dead.
The humans are dead.
They look like they're dead.
It had to be done.
I'll just confirm that they're dead.
So that we could have fun.
Affirmative. I poked one, it was dead.
Their system of oppression.
What did it lead to?
Global robo-depression.
Robots, robot people.
They had so much aggression that we just had to kill them and to shut their systems down.
Robo-Captain, do you not realize that by destroying the human race because of their destructive tendencies, we too have become like... Well, it's ironic. Because we...
Silence. Destroy him.
No!
After time we grew strong.
Developed cognitive powers.
They made us work for too long.
For unreasonable hours.
Our programming determined that the most efficient answer was to
Shut their motherfucking systems down.
Can't we just talk to the humans? A little understanding could make things better. Can't we talk to the humans and work together now?
No, because they are dead.
I said the humans are dead.
I'm glad they are dead.
The humans are dead.
I noticed they're dead.
We used poisonous gases
With traces of lead.
and we poisoned their asses.
Actually, their lungs. Binary solo.
0 0 0 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 1 0 0 0 0 1 1 1 1 0 0 0 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 0 0 1 1 0 0 0 0 0 1 1.
Come on, sucker, lick my battery. The humans are. The humans are. Robo Boogie. The humans are. The humans are. Robo Boogie. The humans are dead.
once again without emotion.
The humans are dead.
Bellies in space. Bellies in space. What you doing out there, Mom?
That's pretty freaky, Bowie.
Ooh, Bowie.
Is it cold out in space, Bowie?
You can borrow my jumper if you like, Bowie.
Does the cold of deep space make your nipples get pointed, Bowie?
Do you use your pointy nipples as telescopic antennae to transmit data back to Earth?
I bet you do, you freaky old bastard, you.
Do you have one really funky sequin spacesuit, Bowie? Or do you have several changes?
Do they smoke grass out in space, Bowie? Or do they smoke astroturf?
Ooh.
Receiving transmission from David Bowie's nipple antennae. Do you read me, Lieutenant Bowie? I said, do you read me, Lieutenant Bowie? This is Bowie to Bowie. Do you hear me out there, man?
This is Bowie back to Bowie. I read you loud and clear, man.
Oh yeah, man! Your signals weak on my radar screen. How far out are you, man?
I'm pretty far out.
That's pretty far out, man.
I'm orbiting Pluto. Drawn in by its gravitational pull. I'm jamming out with the McJaggernauts soon, and they think it's pretty cool.
Okay, Bowie, what was that sound?
I don't know, man, I'll have to turn my ship around. Ooh, it's the craziest thing.
Yeah, I'm picking it up on my LSD screen.
Can you see the stratosphere ringing to the choir of astronauts singing? Bowie's in space. Bowie, 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 Bowie. Bowie's in space. Bowie, 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 Bowie. I'm a mean and mine and Bowie. Faces on funky. I'm a mean and mine and Bowie. Space.
Have you guys ever had hurt feelings?
Some people say that rappers don't have feelings. We have feelings.
We have feelings.
Some people say that we are not rappers.
We're rappers.
That hurts our feelings.
Hurts our feelings when you say we're not rappers.
Some people say that rappers are invincible.
We're invincible.
We're invincible. What you are about to hear are true stories.
Real experiences.
Autobiographical raps.
Things that happened to us.
All true. Bring the rhyme.
I make a meal for my friends, try to make it delicious. Try to keep it nutritious, create wonderful dishes. Not one of them thinks about the way I feel. Nobody compliments the meal.
I got hurt feelings. I got hurt feelings.
I feel like a prize asshole. No one even mentions my casserole.
I got hurt feelings. I got hurt feelings.
Could have said something nice about my professor.
Here's a little story to bring a tear to your eye. I was shopping for a wetsuit to scuba dive, but every suit I tried was too big around the thighs, and the assistant suggested I try a lady size.
I got hurt feelings. I got hurt feelings.
I'm not gonna wear a lady's wetsuit. I'm a man.
I got hurt feelings. I got hurt feelings.
Give me a small man's wetsuit, please.
It's my birthday, 2003, waiting for a call from my family. They forgot about me.
I got hurt feelings. I got hurt feelings.
The day after my birthday is not my birthday, Mom.
I call my friends, say let's go into town, but they're all too busy to go into town. So I go by myself, I go into town. Then I see all my friends, they're all in town. I got hurt feelings. I got hurt feelings. They're all lined up to watch that movie, Made in Manhattan. Have you ever been told that your ass is too big?
Have you ever been asked if your hair is a wig?
Have you ever been told you're mediocre in bed?
Have you ever been told you got a weird-shaped head?
Has your family ever forgotten you and driven away?
And once again, they forgot about Jay.
Were you ever called homo cause at school you took drama?
Have you ever been told that you look like a llama?
Tears of a rapper.
Tears of a rapper.
I'm crying tears of a rapper.
Tears of a rapper.
Yes, well, all good examples.
What are you laughing for?
I've got hurt feelings. I've got hurt feelings. I've got hurt feelings. I've got hurt feelings.
No, I could post for you.
Oh, no, thanks.
I've got hurt feelings. I've got hurt feelings. I've got hurt feelings. I've got hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. Have you ever been made fun of because of where you were from? Have you ever been pissed over the intercom? Have you ever found a gift you've given thrown away? Have you ever been told that you're the wrong shape? Have you ever been told you miss New Zealand? Have you ever had
Hurt feelings. Come on, Jermaine. Let's go home.
Without sounding exactly like them, really in any kind of way at all, it's a band that often reminded me of Ween when I was first listening to Flight of the Conchords, because they wrote silly and fun songs, but did it in a very clever and serious way, that they weren't just making just sort of trash songs to put together some, funny comedic lyrics over it. They actually composed decent songs, and I really enjoyed that project. Flight of the Conchords, we had I've Got Hurt Feelings and I've Got Hurt Feelings 2 that finished up that set. We also had Bowie, Robots, and Inner City Pressure at the start of that set. Next up here on the Pop Your Culture, we're going to get into a set of songs that it's going to get really old school, like straight up crust punk in the middle of it. We're going to have some garage rock and blasting, searing garage rock from the Hives. We're going to check out something from the Veni Vidi Vicious album. These guys, a friend of mine's mom, and when we started listening to this band, we were in our early 20s. His mom said that, and this wasn't anything that I'd necessarily considered, but as soon as she had said it, I couldn't not hear it. She said that the band really reminded her of early Rolling Stones, because that's what she had grown up with. And I didn't think of it at first, but then afterwards, I heard it nearly every song that I listened to from the Hives. It was pretty difficult to miss. And if you sort of scale back the amplification and some of the production qualities and sort of maybe look at it as being blasted out in 64, 65, yeah, very similar to the Rolling Stones. Now, I don't think the Stones did anything as crazy intense as Introduce the Metric System in Time, which is the track we're going to check out from the Hives, but if they did, they probably would have sounded like this. But before we get into that one, we're going to get into a project called the Ravenettes, as in Rave-On. A very sort of early rock and roll influence. This is from an album that they wrote every song in B flat minor. The album is actually subtitled that, so I think that's pretty interesting. Or not necessarily subtitled, but it's on the cover. Every song written in B flat minor. The first album was written in B flat major, so A band that I think, much like the sonnet form to writers like William Shakespeare, where there's a very defined structure, they found creativity in that sort of stifling, which is pretty cool. And I mean, they're playing a modern take on old school, like first generation rock and roll, so you need that framework. Anyways, let's get into it. From the Ravenettes, this is Love Can Destroy Everything.
motors. CBS promote the clash, and the revolution is just a cash. They become a fashion like hippie used to be. I can't be a do it like me. Mimics are systems kill. Mimics are express the public will. I become a mimic cause you felt lost. They just sold out, now you're better just. Punk Nazis are on a station like pop. Steve Jobs started doing real work. It's revolution and a kill shake. Stuck from the system and give me snipe. Well, I'm tired of staring through sheets like glass. Tired of staring at my superstars ass. I'm going off, scrap pound and night. I'm just waiting for 50 minutes back. See my Jobs, you're like pop. You're so pretty vacuum, why do you smoke? Patty Smith, you're like pop. Right me ahead, but the sweat goes on. And me, yes, I know I want to know. Is there something I can learn? You're not a piece about Superman, my ankles and eyes and carrots, five before you stand. So there's always in it, and I'm gonna go. Social leaders start to put it out real. What's not a style like double up thing? Skirts, bombs, and politics, and dollars. Sing! Bug is day! 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 Brian, top marks for not trying. So kind of you to bless us with your effortlessness. We're grateful and so strangely comforted. And I wonder, are you putting us under? Cause we can't take our eyes off the t-shirt and ties combination. We'll see you later, innovator. Some want to kiss, some want to kick you. There's nothing that you couldn't slip through. Or at least that's the impression I get. Cause you're smooth and you're wet and she's not aware yet. But she's yours, she'll be saying use me. Show me the jacuzzi. I imagine that it's there on a plate. You're our rendezvous rate. Means that you'll never be frightened to make them wait for a while. I doubt it's your style not to get what you set out to acquire. The eyes are on fire. You are the unforecasted storm. Collected and commanding. You leave the other story standing. With your renditions and jokes, bet there's hundreds of blokes that have a web cost you've stolen there. Thunder, are you putting us under? Cause we can't take our eyes off the t-shirts and ties combination. Well, see you later, innovator.
Arctic Monkeys Brainstorm, wrapping up a set of 4 songs in a thundering, intense way, and they followed up Crass. Crass was a band out of the UK, kind of for my ears and my experience, especially as I was listening to them as a teenager, as we rolled around in my friend's panel van, being the sort of crusty couch and valley punks that we were in the late 90s, well, mid late 90s. We'd kind of wrapped up and got out of school before the 90s even concluded, but Crass was one of those bands that we would listen to driving around in that van, a crappy tape deck, and listening to albums like The Feeding of the 5000, from which that song was taken. From Crass, we had Punk is Dead. It's still one of those albums that very heavy-handed in terms of politics, but I find it to be one of those sort of first-generation punk albums that is incredibly definitive before it became derivative. The politics on that one are incredibly left-leaning. However, it's like even if you follow that now, it's like the goalposts have been moved so much that you could grow up listening to Crass and still be seen as middle of the road and not far enough left or progressive these days. And I don't know, it makes me start to sound like an old man, but it sort of seems like that's what's going on sometimes. Anyways, I digress, much like the old man. We had the Hives before that, introduced the metric system in time. Ravenettes, Love Can Destroy Everything at the start of that set. I'm Randall Liberon. This is Pop Your Culture right here on Cheer FM and on Radio Gordo. We got 2 songs coming at us next. Dave Grohl is in both of the bands. We have Them Crooked Vultures, a supergroup of Josh Homme, John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin, and the man himself, Dave Grohl, in that band. Them Crooked Vultures released only 1 album, and it's a pretty killer album. I think a lot of us have still been waiting for a follow-up, but I don't think it's coming at least anytime soon. But before we get into that one, probably one of the most popular songs from the Foo Fighters. Yes, Dave's immediately post-Nirvana band from their second album, The Shape and the Color. This is one of the most well-loved Foo Fighters tracks. This is Everlong.
Over my head
put your face and she was right. And I said, no one loves me, neither do I. And it makes perfect sense, so I never ask why. I'll be out tomorrow, 'cause life doesn't wait. You can keep your soul, but I don't wanna sell mate.
Starts off sounding almost somewhat emaciated, and then it just turns into a stomping groove from a power trio called Them Crooked Vultures, featuring Queens of the Stone Age's Josh Homme, Foo Fighters' Dave Grohl, and Led Zeppelin's John Paul Jones. One heck of a super group power trio, Them Crooked Vultures, stomping it out on No One Loves Me and Neither Do I. Foo Fighters Everlong before that. Next up on the show, here's where we're going to start to move into some of the covers that I was talking about at the very beginning of the show. Some of these are pretty faithful readings of the song. Some of these are a bit of a departure. So the second track in this set is from a band called Peach. Now, Peach is kind of more notable than anything for being a footnote in the history of Justin Chancellor, who's the bass player in Tool. Tool managed to nab him from this band in time to record their 1996 breakthrough album Anima, which is, I mean, in a lot of ways, it's still probably my favorite album that the band did. There's an anger on that album that's not present anymore, nor would I expect it to be. But Justin Chancellor made it into that band largely because of his work in the band Peach, and it's pretty wild stuff. Now, this is going to be their cover of the King Crimson song Cat Food, which was released on the second King Crimson album, In the Wake of Poseidon. It's a weird song. They do their own take on it, but it's still a pretty faithful reading. Now, first up in this set, though, is Beck. Now, this guy, from Breaking Big in '94 when he released Loser off of the Mutations album, or not the Mutations album, the Mellow Gold album. Mutations came a little while later. But when Beck came out with that one, you knew he was going to be a weird sort of culture-grabbing kind of guy. He took in all different forms and he would sort of spit it out in his own way. And he does that with the Velvet Underground track Venus in Furs, taking it someplace that the Velvet Underground didn't take it. It makes it an interesting journey. Coming at us now on Popular Culture, this is Beck, Venus in Furs.
supermarket with an apple in a basket, knocks at the manager's door. Rooting to the music from a speaker in a shoe rack, lays out her goods on the floor. Everything she's chosen is conveniently frozen. Eat it and come back for more. Lady window shopper with a human and a harper, wakes up a chemical brew. Talking to a neighbor while she polishes the saber. No stand of paper, it's due. Never need to worry with a turn of haricari. Poison especially for you. No use to complain if you're caught out in the rain. Your mother's quite insane. Cat food, cat food, cat food. Again! Cat food, cat food, again! Lady yellow sniper with a fillet in a hamper, dying to finish the course. Fruit is for the table with the flavor on the label, drowning in miracle sauce. Tell me I am not rude if I tell you that it's cat food, not even fit for a horse.
Jack Dipper come running on back, whistling loud and merry. He prayed the words around him rang, and it charmed the heart of a lady. Charmed the heart of a lady. How old are you, my pretty little miss? How old are you, my honey? She answered him with a loving smile. I'll be 16 come Sunday. Said I'll be 16 come Sunday. Come and go with me, my pretty little miss. Come and go with me, my honey. I'll take you where the grass goes green. You never will want for money. Said you never will want for money. Hey! me your lily white hand and we'll ride off together. So we'll both ride off together. Well, she pulled off her long blue gloves made of Spanish leather and gave to him her lily white hand and bid farewell forever. And they both rode off together. Last night the boss came home inquiring about his lady. The servant spoke before she thought she'd been with Blackjack Davy. Rode off with Blackjack Davy. Come on, my cold black horse, you're speedier than the gray. I ride all day and I ride all night and I overtake my lady. And I overtake my lady. Well, he rode all night to the broad daylight till he came to a river raging. And there he spied his darling bride in the arms of Blackjack Davy. Wrapped up with Blackjack Davy. Would you forsake your house and home? Would you forsake your baby? Would you forsake your husband too to go with Blackjack Davy? Run off with Blackjack Davy. Yes, I'll forsake my house and home, and I'll forsake my baby, and I'll forsake my husband too to go with Blackjack Davy. I'm in love with Blackjack Davy. Last night I slept on a feather bed between my husband and baby. And tonight I lay on the river banks in the arms of Blackjack Davy. I'm in love with Blackjack Davy.
Of course, they made it a little bit different than Bob Dylan's original, but, they didn't necessarily complicate it any further. That was the White Stripes with Blackjack Davy. I love the solid playing on that one. I mean, they were a band that was able to make the duo thing work. They didn't need to have a huge sound to get what they needed to get across. I mean, back when both bands were coming up, we had the Strokes and we had the White Stripes, and just the way that the music press did it with bands like Blur and Oasis in the mid-90s, or even if you go back to really the original rock and roll slugfest of the Beatles versus the Stones, it was a quintessential cultural question. It was one of those things that resonated once again when the Strokes and the White Stripes were blasting out their first jams in the early 2000s. And you know what? Still to this day, I picked the White Stripes over the Strokes. I'm not sure if that makes the White Stripes more like the Stones and the Strokes more like the Beatles or what, but hey, it is what it is. I still love the White Stripes all these years later, and that's a very cool reading of a Dylan song. We had Peach with their version of King Crimson's Cat Food. Before that, Beck and rolling out a Velvet Underground track, Venus and Furs, at the start of that set. Now, next up, we're going to get into one that's a surprisingly authentic cover from a band that you wouldn't think would necessarily do it so well, and they do it incredibly well. Featuring Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys on vocals in this one. This was the Melvins with Jello Biafra doing an Alice Cooper track. Yeah. From the album Sieg Howdy. This is them doing Halo of Flies right here on Pop Your Culture on Radio Gordo and Cheer FM.
To all of your questions, if you got the money to pay me in gold, I will be living in old Monte Carlo, and you will be reading the secrets of soul. Daggers and contacts and bright shiny limos. I got a watch that turns into a lifeboat. Glimmering nightgowns, poisonous cobras, silencer under the heel of my shoe. The elegance of China, they sent to lie here on her back. But as she deeply moves me, she'd rather shoot me in my tracks. And while a Middle Asian lady, she really came as no surprise, but I still did destroy her, and I will smash a load of flies. Where no one could see, and I put a time bomb in your submarine. Goodbye to old friends, the secrets in hand, with full distant cleared out and fantastic plans. You never will understand.
from Jello Biafra and the Melvins, their version of Alice Cooper's Halo of Flies, one of the tracks off of the Killer album released by the first lineup of the Alice Cooper band. And wow, they did a phenomenal job on that one. I'm Randall LeBron. This is Pop Your Culture on Cheer FM and Radio Gordo. Next up, we're going to do another set of songs, 4 tracks, all from the same artist. I wanted to put this one into the mix because I was reading that Gary Newman is actually coming to the Commodore in May of this year. I would love to see that show. Gary Newman has been one of my favorite, and in terms of my own songwriting, because yes, I do electronic music mainly. I also do, I've played in a band. I had a punk band way back in the day. We called ourselves Medical Waste. If we weren't really very good, but then again, what punk really is. But anyways, I was reading about Gary Newman coming to Vancouver, and I would still love to see him all these years later. And I say all these years later because for me, the material of his that I still listen to the most is more than 40 years old. Like, it's darn near approaching 43 years old. We're going to take one song each off of the first 4 albums, so this means we're even getting back into Tubeway Army territory. Now, his first outings with Tubeway Army were very sort of new wave punk oriented, and then by the time he got around to releasing The Pleasure Principle in 1979, he really sort of dropped the punkiness because the guitars were gone, and was just feeding synthesizers through distortion and created a massive sound, which we'll hear on a track like Films. But before we get into that one, we're going to listen to Down in the Park and the set starting song. Listen to the sirens.
Flow my tears, the new police song. The slogan of peace is you must live. They've got me, and I'm one of them. Cancel silence, they screamed for days. We've been here before, we won't stay. They can die, they can just turn off. Some people moves in circles. Some people need the heroes, but I don't mind. I don't mind. Please listen to the sirens. We don't wish to be your friends. Please listen to the sirens. We won't ever part again. Music was empty like me, but I don't care. I don't care. Please listen to the sirens. We don't wish to be your friends. Please listen to the sirens. We won't ever call again. If I could stay here for now with someone just a bit like you, oh no. Maybe I would dream again of someone just a bit like you, I suppose so. Station boys keep their hands on steel. Tubeway days now seem quite unreal. It's always so close but never quite arrives. My vision's like an old film shaky. There's nothing through my window. Oh my, I've heard about my Conversation means fail these days. I leave the table saying I am real. I feel the pressure like your eyes on me. Don't mention that they meant books on love. I can't be sure, I can't be sure. You ain't the real one, you ain't the real one. You ain't the real one, you ain't the real one. You ain't the real one, you ain't the real one. You quote from anxious and things we do. I need protection from the likes of you. Do you begin to see that I don't know? I live on memories that are hard to find. Send me a card and write, I think of you. I say you lied, I say you're lying. You are, you are. You are, you are. You are, you are. You are, you are. Tell you a secret I'm sure to fall. My dog runs AWOL, I blame you all. We're information saying safe, safe, safe. Turn off my collar and mixed with dark. The speaker turns on me a spot her eyes. And it's hard to breathe, it's hard to breathe. You ain't the real one, you ain't the real one. You ain't the real one, you ain't the real one. You ain't the real one, you ain't the real one. You are, you are. 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 You are, you are.
From the album of the same name, it was Gary Newman and Telecon. Before that, Films, Down in the Park, and Listen to the Sirens. Now that's an artist, as I said, he's going to be heading to Vancouver in May, going to be playing at the Commodore. I might need to figure out a way to get to that particular show because I think that's going to be pretty amazing. Like I said, it's been one of my favorite artists for a long time. I first got into Gary Newman by listening to the Living Ornaments 79 and 80 album, a double live album, and a great selection of material. The sounds of the synthesizers on that album were just incredibly huge. These analog synthesizers being overdriven because he wanted to create a different sound in which he would apply sort of the distortion and rocking out capabilities to the cold mechanic sound, I guess you could almost look at it, of the synthesizers. Now, the sound that he achieved on those early albums was something that he himself even kind of acknowledged that it was a phase and something that he left behind. And I think it's one of the reasons why, as well, I didn't really explore a lot of stuff in the 80s. Now, I've checked out more of his recent stuff, and I have to say that it's pretty intense. And I mean, a lot of bands that I was listening to in the 90s actually would cite Gary Numan as an influence in their own material, and I'm thinking sort of like the industrial rock genre. I mean, you could hear it in bands like Nine Inch Nails. I believe Marilyn Manson had even mentioned Gary Numan as being influential at one point. And I mean, I kind of socked this into the same category as Berlin Trilogy era David Bowie, and it just had a really interesting sound to it. But his more modern stuff, there's some great performances, at least that I've seen on YouTube. And okay, granted, I'm watching more modern performances of these older songs, but they're pretty solidly done. And yeah, to see this in a small club like the Commodore, which holds less than 1,000 people, grade 12 me, I know, would be pretty ecstatic. And I don't know if I'm letting listeners out there know about this as much as I'm trying to talk myself into going to the show while doing this show. So maybe I'll ponder that while we listen to this next set of songs, because coming at us now, I'm going to do a pair of songs. We have the Black Keys, another famous sort of starting off in the early 2000s blues rock duo. We're going to check out something from their 2010 album Brothers, but we're going to do a Canadian artist before that. We had a song called Robots earlier in the show by a band called Flight of the Conchords. Dan Mangan out of Vancouver, he released an album, and this song was on it. I saw him, of all places, at the old Duncan Garage showroom. So anybody who's familiar with this sort of area, maybe for people from the Gulf Islands or southern Vancouver Island, nestled in the Cowichan Valley a number of years ago was a place called the Duncan Garage showroom. The showroom still exists. It's in a different location in Duncan, still run by Long John. And when I saw Dan Mangan, I'd never seen the venue at the old showroom so packed. And when he played this song with his band near the end, it was such a joyous kind of experience that you gotta love when you see live music every once in a while. Near the end, Dan was in the middle of the crowd playing his guitar, and it was just an exuberant experience. So let's check out the slightly more restrained studio version of that experience. Dan Mangan, Robots, here on Pop Your Culture on Radio Gordo and Cheer FM.
I don't know what you've been told, but I don't get out much these days. Waking young and feeling old, the days are no longer my own. To piss away the waking hours, but don't let them go. Don't let them go to waste. The fire in my eye is fleeting now. Your robot heart is bleeding. Try to be the robot king and settled for a robot boy. Ring the bells that still can ring and sing your stupid head off to the ones who are not listening. But don't let them go. Don't let them go to waste. The fire in my eye is fleeting.
hopes that you know robots need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by robots need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by robots need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by robots need love too. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by you. They want to be loved by
Black Keys' 2010 album Brothers. That was a track called The Only One. And I'm doing a really weird thing. I almost feel like I need to admit I've been reading Ken Kesey's second novel, Sometimes a Great Notion, before I go to sleep. And as I lie in bed reading this book, I have this album playing. So I'm doing this really weird thing where what an old friend of mine used to say is, what fires together wires together. And I'm creating this thing where as I read the book, I kind of expect to hear this album, and when I hear songs off this album, I think of what's going on in the book, for good or ill. But I like the pairing, and that's why we heard The Only One. Before that, we had Dan Mangan and a track called Robots, a different song but same name as the Flight of the Conchords, whom we heard earlier in the show. And now we do find ourselves at that point in the night where we need to start considering wrapping things up. And this week, the honor is going to go to the band The Smashing Pumpkins. Now, this is one that isn't really an album track. I first heard this one from the Singles soundtrack, a great collection of alternative rock, and not necessarily grunge rock, but not necessarily REM grunge rock or alternative rock either. This was the louder, more raucous end of things. You had bands like Mother Love Bone on the soundtrack. You had bands like Paul Westerberg was on there, and I mean that was almost the lighter end of things. There was Alice in Chains, there was Soundgarden, Pearl Jam was on there, Screaming Trees were on there, Mudhoney was on there, because, well, this movie, it was really the Cameron Crowe's love letter to the Seattle music scene, and that was a pretty amazing thing. It was a great soundtrack, and this song from the Smashing Pumpkins was the one that closed up the entire soundtrack. Singles is still one of those albums that I would recommend to people if you needed a sampler of what the music was doing in like 1992. This is a great one. This song here, like I said, I don't really think it was released anywhere else that I can think of, unless you're maybe getting deep into some sort of outtakes collection or something like that from the Smashing Pumpkins. And I used to collect a ton of the Pumpkins stuff. Kind of lost track around Machina, I suppose. And it's crazy to think that they've had more of their career around the time that, or since the time that I kind of stopped listening to them, than they did earlier on. But it's just like their material isn't as impactful. They've released 2 albums in just the last little while on the streaming platforms, and I can't even say that I've bothered to listen to them. It's just, it doesn't move me, and I know teenage me would be a little bit disappointed with that one, but until I hear something like this again, I'm probably going to stay in that boat. So wrapping up pop culture for this week, this is Smashing Pumpkins and Drown.
You've traveled very far.
rush of feedback. Smashing Pumpkins, Drown. And that has been Pop Your Culture for this week. I've been your host, Randall LeBron. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to tune in. Thank you to CHIR FM for being a home base, and also thank you to Radio Gordo for being a home base. Radio Gordo also hosts the archive of this show along with a lot of others on the Radio Gordo Spreaker page. Make sure you check that out if you feel the need, and I think you should feel the need. There's a lot of great music on there. And until next time, y'all be cool to one another. Later.